In the previous lesson, we talked about the p and b consonant sounds, and we also introduced the concept of stops. In today's lesson, we're going to continue our discussion of stop sounds with the sounds k and g. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide, and welcome to English Hacks, where I help you to sound like a native and to understand native speech better. Let's first talk a bit about the spelling so that we have that out of the way. The k sound is voiceless. It is often written with the letter K, but it is also commonly written with the letter C. Less commonly, you will see it written with the letter Q. The g sound is the voiced version of k. Now this is very commonly written with the letter G, but remember that the letter G can also represent other sounds, usually the J sound. We are not talking about the J sound in this lesson, we're only talking about the G sound. Of course, like with most consonant letters, these can also be silent and just spelling. For example, no, knife, night, knuckle, or for the letter G, gnome, gnaw, feign, high, and though. Okay, great. Now that we know that, what actually are the k and g sounds? So when we did the p and b, we closed the lips, and that was the thing that stopped the airflow that we then pushed out. With the k and g sounds, you're going to use the back of your tongue, and you're going to close the back of your tongue here. Many languages, if not most languages, I believe have these two sounds, just like the p and b sounds. But like we saw before, there are three types of k sounds and three types of g sounds in English. This is what your language might not have. So let's take a closer look. First, we'll start with the three types of K sounds. Just like with the P sound, we're going to follow all of the exact same rules. So if the K sound is at the start of a stressed syllable, even if that syllable is in the middle of the word, it will be stronger. It will be aspirated, which means we want to hear the force of air behind it. For example, cat, kiss, cream, record, because, decay. If the k is at the start of an unstressed syllable, then it will be weak or soft. In other words, unaspirated, meaning that we don't want to hear a bunch of air behind the sound. So it will sound like k, k, instead of k, k. For example, record, picker, weaker, contain, create, Canadian. Also like the p sound, if this soft or weak k sound is at the start of a word, you might hear a little bit of extra force because it's at the start of the word, but remember, we don't want to have as much force of air if that happens. Now let's look at the glottal stop. Before, we saw that with the P, the P sound, you close your lips, and you have to close the air here with your glottis. If you don't know what a glottis is, or this is new for you, make sure you go watch the lesson on the p and b sounds, and then come back here. For the k sound, you don't have to use your lips, obviously. You're going to close the back of your tongue to make the k position. And while you're there, right, it'd actually be more like this because your tongue goes down this way. While you bring this up so that it closes, you're going to close off your glottis. However, it's probably easier to think of it this way. Close the K and hold your breath, just for a quick little tiny second. This is like we talked about before with hokka. So instead of thinking, oh, well, I have to close this and how do I do that? Just close into a K position. Hold your breath for half a second. For example, back, sit, look, peep, fate. Again, notice that I'm just cutting that sound off. Right after I go into the position, it just cuts. But because I'm in the K position, it will sound like a K. There can be some confusion with the T, and we're going to talk more about that later, but that is how you do the glottal stop K sound. And also, like the P sound, if there's a connection between two words, this will reactivate the glottal stop, and we will have an actual K sound, a soft K sound. For example, back at, sick at, luck at, peek at, fake at. Let's now take a closer look at the G sound. So again, all of the same things are going to apply, and this is going to match exactly to the B sound that we talked about last time. So for example, at the start of a stressed syllable, the G sound is going to be nice and strong. We're not going to hear the air because of the voice, but it needs to be stronger than just a little G sound, right? It's G, G, such as go, get, game, begin, forget, again. If it's at the start of an unstressed syllable, it will be weaker, so not as much force. For example, bigger, Megan, rugged, guitar, regular. When I was trying to find examples for the weak or soft G at the start of a word, the only word that I could find or think of was the word guitar, which is stressed on the second syllable. So I'm sure there are other words where the soft G is used at the start of a word that is an unstressed syllable, but all the other words that I found, if G was at the start of a word, that syllable was stressed. So you're probably only going to find the soft G in the middle of a word. Or between two words in a connection, of course. Speaking of which, let's talk about the glottal stop G. So again, you want to go into that G position with the back of your tongue, and you want to close off the air here. You want to hold your breath, but as you're doing that, as you're closing it off, you need to sort of push that voice up through as best as you can, but don't let it actually go out of your nose. For example, big, drag, log, league, fatigue. And notice it's not so dramatic. I'm not saying like big, I'm not trying to push my lungs through my nose or something. Not quite that strong, but that's just to give you an idea that there needs to be this sort of little voice sound there. Because if you don't have that little bit of voice as you cut off the sound, it's going to sound more like a K, glottal stop K, and we don't want that. Of course, if we connect them, big at, drag at, log at, league at, fatigue at. So our next few lessons on the stop sounds are going to be related to the T sound and the D sound. This is where things are going to get really interesting and a little more complicated. So thank you all for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.